Hello there. Before we begin today's episode, I'd like to make special mention of Phil and the team at Coequal. Coequal are a media organisation that create riveting podcasts and films to foster social change. They produce the A Good Mind Too podcast, on which people tell their true stories in breathtaking details to such an extent that you'll feel as though you're actually in the midst of them. They produce the Agents for Change podcast, providing insight into the scientific research on how we can progress toward a society free from violence. They also operate the Waves Resilience program, providing counselling and mentoring services augmented by the beach and water related activities. I highly recommend you listen to the excellent work of Coequal. Links will be in the description of this episode. Hello there, John Coturillo here, the life coach of your listener. Thank you for joining me for this episode. Today I'd like to discuss the power of asking questions, which is something that I referenced in my recent episode on communication, which I'll link in the description of this episode. But today I'd like to focus on why I tend to ask so many questions. And this is an observation that's been made both in my professional interactions and my personal interactions. So today I'd like to discuss the importance of it. Now, as usual, this is not professional advice. If you do need advice with any aspect of your life, please seek professional help. But today I'd like to clarify to some people who may be wondering why I ask so many questions, but also stimulate discussion on the possibilities we create when we ask questions. Now, we can ask questions for a variety of reasons, but what's important to understand is that their purpose isn't just for us to obtain information. When we ask a well-formulated question, we could actually be performing multiple benefits, not just for ourselves, but for other people. When we ask a question of someone that's well-formulated, not only are we asking them to provide information to us, but we could also be prompting them to consider searching for information which they didn't consider to search for themselves. And when this happens, we're also engaging their mental resources that are useful to consider possibilities and solve problems. Now, when working with my own clients, I've been asked, can I just have direct advice? And this is a valid question. People often do want advice, justifiably so. Perhaps they have a problem that desperately needs their attention. But it's important to understand why I ask so many questions. When I ask specifically formulated questions, I'm gradually understanding parts of the problem that my client is describing to me. It wouldn't be useful for me to ask them one big question, because then they would only be able to describe what they were experiencing in general terms. I need to understand the specifics of what's happening, including the specifics of your own experience. So I focus on one small aspect of the problem at a time and understand how you define and conceptualize the ideas that you're describing. And in addition, what specific aspect of the situation is affecting you and what specifically you would like to change. This, in my opinion, is infinitely more useful than simply lecturing on what I believe to be the correct solution, for multiple reasons. If I only listen to your problem in brief and then try to give you a brief solution, the likelihood is I wouldn't have understood all the aspects of the problem. But by neglecting the questioning process, I've also neglected an opportunity for you to learn about the aspects of the problem, but also aspects of the problem-solving process. And even if a brief solution that I can provide is effective to solving one specific problem, the likelihood is that you wouldn't have developed an understanding of the actual problem-solving process, which means if you encounter a different problem, you may not be able to solve it. And that fosters people's reliance on me as a problem solver, rather than as someone who teaches a problem-solving process. And fostering reliance is not ethical. If, however, we engage in that careful questioning, not only am I helping you solve the problem with which you want help, I'm also potentially helping you develop your own problem-solving process so that in the future, you can apply that same process to solving other problems. Another common experience is that when somebody's describing their problem, especially if they're in distress, simply providing a simple solution can feel quite invalidating. It can make that person feel as though the other person wasn't listening or wasn't really interested in sitting with the person in that experience, perhaps feeling as though they were uncomfortable with their emotions. Not only does that feel horrible, it's also not placing the person in an appropriate mindset to help them solve problems. So by working with you one step at a time through each aspect of the problem without trying to impose quick solutions immediately, I'm helping you enter into an appropriate mindset to solve problems, as well as teaching you the problem-solving process. And that's been the philosophy behind my various practices, including my coaching paradigm. Another phenomenon I've observed have been when somebody who is perceived to have a certain level of authority, for example, somebody who's highly qualified or particularly well known or respected, when they answer a particular question quickly, sometimes people may be quick to assume that because of that person's status, that the answer they provide is immediately going to be valid or truthful. However, if you later analyze some of these quick solutions, you may actually find that they're missing vital aspects of the problem. Now, as to the matter of why I like to ask so many questions when I'm socializing with people, without exaggeration, I'm just fascinated by people. I enjoy learning about others' lives and I enjoy learning about others' perspectives. I love information. I love to learn. And for me, learning about somebody else is far more interesting sometimes than talking about myself. Although I'm always happy to talk about myself when appropriate, but because I know myself so well, I can sometimes feel as though perhaps it's making the other person feel awkward if I talk too much about myself. So I prefer to hear about their life and get their perspectives. So thank you for joining me for today's episode. As per usual, please do not take what you see on the internet as advice. Always seek professional consultation if you need help. Whatever your opinions may be, I'd love to hear them and potentially consider you as being a guest on the show if you'd like to be. Until next time, take care.